Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the 2024 presidential election and my current prediction for if the matchup is between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, which I think is a scenario that's not super unlikely, but also not the most likely scenario. So we're going to get right into it by taking a look at Joe Biden's current approval ratings. So as of right now, Joe Biden has a 42% approval rating and a 52% disapproval rating, meaning he's unpopular, but not as unpopular as it gets. I think there's kind of this notion that Biden's historically unpopular, and he's not popular by any means, but he's not also historically unpopular. And if you look at where Donald Trump was at this point right now, Trump was still a little bit less popular than Biden, because right now Biden's approval was at 42.2%, Trump was at 42%. So Trump was around the same, slightly less popular than Biden. And so we should take a look at what a presidential map between these two unpopular presidents would look like. So first, unsurprisingly, I think Biden wins the normal state Democratic states by safe margins. Colorado by 2024, it's been getting so much bluer that I think it's safe no matter what. The normal New England states, Vermont, Maine's first district, as well as the District of Columbia. Then for Trump, I think he wins the normal red states and some states that are trending red by safe margins, or by safe amounts. I think he wins Kansas. I won't touch yet, just out of an abundance of caution, because it's too far. But I think he wins Missouri by a safe margin, Indiana, Iowa. I think Ohio, not yet though. And then I do think he would win the Maine's second district by a safe. Actually, it fluctuates a little bit, so kind of like Kansas Kansas, Ohio, and Maine second should all be safe, but I'll put them as likely, but I'll characterize them with the safe states because I don't think they're worth talking about, but they're essentially safe, but I'm not going to put them as safe just yet. Same with Alaska, actually. So yeah, now for our likely states for Joe Biden, I think he wins New Mexico by a likely margin. In 2020, he did okay there. He won it by, I think, 11 points, so he did better than Hillary Clinton did in the state, but he still didn't really do amazingly, considering the fact that he was ahead in the polls by a lot more. He actually underperformed his polls by a lot in New Mexico, and so if he does that again, it could get dicey, especially with the fact that this state has a substantial Hispanic population. If rural Hispanic continue to trend against the Democratic Party, New Mexico could get dicey. But for now, I think it's likely could get lean, though, if things get interesting. Nebraska second, I think, is also going to be likely D. I'd be really surprised if the Trump manages to win it back. They have a Republican in Congress, Don Bacon, but he's overperformed. He won by 4 in a year that Trump lost it by 7. So it's a split ticket district for sure. Next up, you've got Maine at large. I think that's pretty clearly likely Democrat. Minnesota, I'm moving into the likely Democrat column. I think I had this lean last video, especially with Kamala Harris, but Minnesota was was Clinton plus 2 in 2016. That's despite the fact that Hillary Clinton ran an awful campaign in the state, didn't try to win it, didn't really have that appeal. And this is with the fact that Minnesota is a state that I think for short term is trending blue, long term we don't really know. It could be trending red, but I think this decade will be pretty good for Democrats there because of education polarization. Because the Minneapolis area is getting so much more college educated, we could see Minnesota becoming a Democratic state as a result of that area itself, because it's just such an urban state, and I think that's what really helps out Democrats here. Biden also wins Virginia. Obviously, a lot of Republicans think that they're back kind of in it in Virginia because of that gubernatorial election that, they won by 2%, but in 2009, they won the Virginia gubernatorial election by 17, and they lost it in 2012, so we've seen bigger shifts. Virginia is more Republican down ballot anyways, and as recently as 2014, Republicans were competitive in a Senate race there, and in 2016, they were kind of competitive at the presidential level there. And, even in 2016, they actually won the House vote in Virginia. So Virginia does go red occasionally. It's just 2021, 2022 is going to be a really good year for Republicans, and that was an awful election for Democrats. And then New Hampshire, I think, is also likely because it's New Hampshire. It's a fairly blue state, and the trends in the suburbs are just really good for Democrats in areas like New Hampshire. Republicans, I think Trump wins. Actually, no, I won't touch it just yet. But I think Trump does win Florida and South Carolina by likely margins. This isn't to say that they're solid, especially Florida, because Florida will generally be pretty good to the incumbent. Biden's not really a strong incumbent, but he's still an incumbent who presumably won't have a massive scandal. And so I think as a result of that, Biden would have a little bit to work with there. But on the other hand, Florida's getting so much more Republican that end of the day, I think Trump wins it no matter what he really does. He won in 2020 despite the fact that he lost the national popular vote by 4.4%, and Florida voted 7.7% to the right of the country as a whole in 2020, and he'll probably do that again in 2022. And so with all that, I just think that it will vote Republican again in 2024 unless the Democrats manage to get this massive red wave where they win by like 8 or 9 nationally, which would be very surprising to me at least. And I think that's it. South Carolina is likely Republican for obvious reasons. Already talked about the other ones. Lean Democrat, I think Biden doesn't have any lean states, but Georgia maybe. I think I'll put Georgia as a maybe for lean, but just because I'm not really generous to Biden in these videos, I give him Georgia here. But it's just because the Atlanta suburbs are getting so much bluer, because every day more and more Democrats move into Georgia, and the Republicans have just been getting really bad numbers. They lost those runoffs by 2%. They weren't. They're not in a good position long term here, and I think it might be close in 2024. Beyond that, it's really bad for Republicans anyways. The trends there are just so good for Democrats. But Trump, though, I think Trump wins Texas by a lean margin. Biden, because the thing is, we talk about Biden's problems with Hispanics and the Democratic Party's problems with Hispanics, which are very real, and they'll continue in the future. But Biden does have one trick up his sleeve in that regard, and that he's the incumbent. Hispanics do flock to incumbents, generally speaking. The past 4 presidents have all done better in their second run for president with Hispanics, including Donald Trump, who did worse with every demographic except for Hispanics in 2020 compared to 2016. So I do really think that Trump carries Texas, but by a little less than people might think. I think people say he's going to win it by greater than 2020 margins, I think are really just fundamentally missing the point that Texas is getting so much bluer. So I think Texas votes for Trump by 3 or 4% in 2024, but he still wins it. Next up, you've got a state like Wisconsin, which Wisconsin, opposite of Texas, is trending red, and I think Democrats overstate how competitive they are here. It's a state that's very, very conservative, very, very it's very rural, conservative culturally. Democrats have been doing okay here because they win a decent amount of the white vote, but that's kind of a thing in the past, and as we're seeing now, the coalitions are different. And 2020, I think, was kind of like the last dance for Democrats in Wisconsin. I think it was really their last hurrah with winning it. They really campaigned for it, they really worked hard for it, and they ended up narrowly taking it, but I think it's over for them in the future in Wisconsin. So then you've got these states that I think are really just toss-ups. I think distinctively, I think I'll give Biden Michigan, just because I think he holds one of the Rust Belt states, but I think the rest I'll go for Trump. They're all really close to us. Don't hammer me in the comments, because I know that these are the states that give Trump the election, but they're all really, really close. I think Michigan's different because it's a state that is quite, it's stagnated in the past because in 2016 it only voted about 2 points to the right of the country, and if Biden wins the popular vote by 2 or 3 points, which I think he will in 2024, Michigan still probably votes blue, but very narrowly by under a point. We're talking Georgia 2020 margins here, and Biden wins Michigan because I think the suburbs really come out for him. Because look, he might not be the best candidate, but Trump scares a lot of suburban voters, and I think he freaks a lot of them out, and they'll flock to Biden no matter what. Not as much as they did in 2020, but I think the trends there are just really boosting Biden. Because without trends, he loses a lot of these states. If Biden had a 42% approval rating in 2020 and Trump was more popular than he was in 2020, Trump probably wins in a landslide. But yeah. So I think Michigan narrowly votes for Biden just because of the suburbs really coming out, and because there is a Michigan that are trending blue even in terms of candidate quality. Gretchen Whitmer ran ahead of Biden 8 points statewide, and she actually did worse than him in a lot of the Grand Rapids areas and some parts of suburban Detroit, like Oakland and Livingston counties. So those areas I wouldn't expect to totally drop out for Democrats just yet. But then Pennsylvania, I think Pennsylvania, unlike Michigan, there's enough swing between the suburbs, and I think that with a lot of Democratic bastions like Erie and Scranton and Wilkes-Barre and Harrisburg just kind of having their last hurrah in 2020, I think Pennsylvania is favorable for Trump, especially in a positive environment for him. But if Fetterman loses by more than 3, I think it goes red in 2024. But if Fetterman keeps it close in 2022, it probably stays blue, in all honesty. North Carolina's going to stay red, and I'm pretty confident about this one. It'll be by under 2% because it's trending blue overall, but we're still not really seeing a ton of evidence to suggest the state will flip in 2024 the way a lot of people used to think it would. Because back, a year ago, the common prediction was that Biden was going to flip North Carolina in 2024, but I think that has kind of gone away as Biden's approval has waned, and, it's now 9 or 10% worse than it was a year ago today. So, all of that really makes me think that Joe Biden will lose North Carolina in 2024, and that he doesn't really have the ability to energize the base there as much. Arizona is interesting because like on paper you'd think the Democrats would win it again because the trends there are really good for Biden. But if Biden were to win Arizona, he'd have to really get out Hispanics, really get out Native voters in the north, and really, really bring in the suburbs. Because I think Arizona is interesting long term because Democrats in 2020 won it off a very weird coalition because they did well with decently well with Hispanics. They did very well with suburbanites, and they got a good Native turnout in 2020. And I think that another part of that suburban coalition was that Phoenix and Tucson, the cities themselves, came out for Democrats. I think in these urban trends, if these Hispanic trends continue, Democrats are probably going to trade off in Arizona, which makes me think it'll be a swing state for a long time. Because, people say Arizona's the next Virginia. I think that's Georgia. I think Arizona's kind of like the next Pennsylvania, next maybe Michigan, maybe a lean D state, but it'll fluctuate a bit. So I think 2024 will be a good year for Republicans, and I think that's enough to give them Arizona. Nevada, though, Nevada's really tough. I wouldn't be stunned if Biden carries it here. It wouldn't really surprise me because it's such a weird state. But Trump, I think, is a good candidate for Nevada. People act like he was a bad candidate, but I think he's really good, better than someone like even Adam Laxalt, who's getting a lot of hype, but I think he loses in 2022. But in 2024, if Biden because the thing is, Biden neglected Nevada in 2020, and I think if he does that again, he loses it. But if he really campaigns for it, probably wins it. But I think Trump does really well in rural Nevada. The city of Las Vegas itself could get interesting if Trump has the same urban appeal he had in 2020. And so because of that, I think you're looking at a Nevada that's very close, but overall narrowly vote spread. Like, again, Nevada, Arizona, and Pennsylvania, especially, and Michigan, are all really, really close. They're all they're all coin flips, really. And I just think that they all break Trump's way because I think it's just 2024 is more here than 2020. Because in 2020, these all broke Biden's way, and the toss-up shifted towards Biden. I think in 2024 we see a bit of a reversal of that. So, a pretty quick video. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like. Comment down what you think. Do you think Biden can hold on? Do you think Biden would beat Trump in 2020? But thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye, guys.